Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Okay, welcome back from lunch, everyone. Again, apologize that we're a little bit behind schedule. I was actually thinking about having lunch until 2. I was going to suggest that it would have been an hour and 45-minute lunch. So we're starting at 2 today rather than 1:45. So perhaps you're okay with a little bit of lateness, not exactly on time, just some impermanence. But what I have to teach you is actually quite short. I'd be surprised if this takes me 15 or 20 minutes to even teach you. And then we can actually do the meditation, and we'll probably actually still be done before 3 o'clock today. Not that that's necessarily the goal. If we go later, we go later. If we finish early, we finish early. But what I have to teach you is probably only going to take me maybe 10 minutes at most, or 15 minutes to actually teach it to you. What I'm going to be teaching you is helping you to understand how to meditate to eliminate sexual cravings. And then after I teach you that, I'm going to teach you how to do meditation to realize non-self. You're going to need more than just this to be able to eliminate sexual cravings. You're going to need more than just this to realize non-self. There's other things that you need, but these are 2 tools in your tool belt. Remember, the Eightfold Path is always the foundation. So whenever you have sexual craving arising in the mind, you'd like to cut it off if that's what you're trying to do. If you're trying to eliminate your sexual cravings, you would like to cut that off whenever you feel it arising, because it's going to be a bodily sensation first, then it's going to be a feeling, right? Then it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Then it's coming from a mental object, which is sensual desire. So by you doing breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing generosity, that's helping you eliminate all cravings, desires, attachments. So sometimes people that aren't even interested in eliminating their sexual cravings, just by getting on the path to enlightenment and doing breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing generosity, you'll notice a gradual depletion of your sexual cravings just with that. But if you need some extra tools to really go in and you're really trying to stomp this out and get rid of it, this is what you would like to be able to do. But just remember, it's the Eightfold Path that's going to be there to be able to support you with all the elimination of your cravings, desires, attachments, with breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, and then using your mindfulness that any time you notice the arising of any discontent feelings, you'd like to cut it off and let it go. But this meditation I'm going to teach you is either to help you to reduce your sexual cravings or completely eliminate them. It's not like you do it once and you're going to completely eliminate your sexual cravings. It's going to gradually wear away. So where somebody might end up using this is, let's just say that they have 5 or 10 different boyfriends or girlfriends. They sit in on a 5 precepts discussion with me and they realize that it's unwise to have so many partners, and they decide they'd like to bring it down to one partner. Then they might use this meditation because they maybe have a high sexual craving, having sex with 5 or 10 different people throughout the week. Maybe they need to bring that sexual craving down, and this is one of the ways that they can do that. Or say somebody's in a relationship with a partner and both of them have decided, like, hey, we're done with this sexual activity. We'd like to kind of move past it and we'd like to get rid of it. This is a way to do that, because what you'll notice is that you can get rid of a lot of sensual desires. You can eliminate all the different fetters on the path to enlightenment. But if you have sexual contact, you might have done all the other work on the path to enlightenment, but you're still feeling agitation or annoyance or frustration when the mind is wanting sex and you can't get it. So to be able to get to enlightenment, where the mind is actually enlightened, you need to ultimately eliminate sexual contact. When or if you choose to do that is up to you, but you understand that you've been in situations where you've wanted to have sex, you couldn't have it, and your mind was discontent because of it. Unlike a craving like for a piece of chocolate cake. A piece of chocolate cake, you might have a craving for a chocolate cake. You get frustrated when you don't have it, and now you need to eliminate that craving. And in order to eliminate that craving, you can eliminate it from the mind. And then ultimately, you can still eat that chocolate cake. You just do so without craving, desire, attachment. Sexual activity is one of the things that you have to completely eliminate 100%. You can't have sex without actually having craving, desire, attachment. In fact, when you're having sex, what you're essentially doing is you're stimulating all the senses, or someone else is stimulating all the senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. All 6 sense bases are typically involved. And the height of that activity is where the mind has this great excitement, and we call it an orgasm, right? And there's some kind of bodily sensations as a result of that arising of those pleasant feelings, because there's pleasant feelings with an orgasm that happen in the mind, but there's bodily sensations that are happening before that. So you can't actually continue to have sex and get to enlightenment too, but you can get to the second stage of enlightenment, do all that other work, kind of hang out there for a while, and then 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, depending on your age and where you are in life, you might ultimately then decide, okay, I'm done with sex and let me move on and do something else and actually get to enlightenment where I can fully extinguish this craving and no longer have this agitation when you're wanting sex and you can't have it. So in that second stage of enlightenment, if you do all the other work, like on the ego, eliminating the conceit and all those other things, the moral conduct and all the other things that you're learning on the path, if you did all of that stuff and still were having sex, you would be quite peaceful. Your mind would be peaceful, probably 99.9% of the time, and you're still having sex. But every once in a while, you're going to want sex and you're going to be agitated or frustrated or annoyed. One of the things that you'll notice is that when you do let go of sexual activity, it makes it easier to let go of a lot of these other cravings. As long as the mind's holding on to sexual activity, it makes it kind of challenging to let go of some of these other attachments that are in the mind. But you can get to a point where you've done all the other work on the path to enlightenment. Your life is quite peaceful, quite joyful. You're experiencing quite a bit of peace, but every once in a while, when you want sex and you can't get it, you're going to be agitated and frustrated and annoyed. And this is where you might decide you would like to use this meditation to kind of stomp that out 100%. The way you might think about it is like wringing out a rag and getting every last little drop of this water out of the rag. And that's what you're doing with the mind, is getting every last little craving out of the mind. So I'm not going to be starting with meditation this afternoon, and we're going to actually end with meditation because I'm going to teach it to you first, and then we're going to be doing these meditation. So I'm about to flip the slide here. And when I flip the slide, you're going to see a dead body. You're going to see a corpse that has been dissected with all the organs out of it. So I just give you the heads up. If you're not interested in seeing that, just understand that that's what I'm going to be displaying on the screen. So here, I'll switch over. This is a dead corpse, okay? So the way that you do this meditation during the lifetime of the Buddha was called the 32-part body meditation, because they didn't have photographs to be able to look at like this. I'm going to teach you guys a way that you can do this meditation and accomplish what the Buddha taught. But let me first describe to you what the Buddha taught. He taught what's called the 32-part body meditation, because they didn't have photographs and imagery to be able to do what I'm going to teach you. What he would do is he would teach you to envision in the mind each one of the 32 body parts. And you would usually start on the outer layer, like the hair, and then you would go into the skin and the sweat and the saliva and the tears and the bladder and the lungs and the heart, all these different things. And you would visualize the different organs. And you would do this with your eyes closed. And essentially what you're developing is what's called the unattractiveness of the body. This is the words of the Buddha. The perception of unattractiveness should be developed to abandon lust. And what you're doing is you're trying to see the body as it truly is. Because when we look at a human body and we're attracted to it, we're not seeing true reality. What we're seeing is the way that they've made up their hair, and maybe if somebody's wearing makeup or jewelry or some kind of fancy clothes, maybe they've put on a scent like a cologne or perfume or something like this. We're seeing the outer layer of this skin, and we're seeing the hair and the clothes and the jewelry, and that's what we're attracted to, that scent, our sight, our smell, things that we hear, maybe their voice. We're attracted to those kinds of things. So by doing this 32-part body meditation where you're visualizing all these individual parts of the body, it's helping you to see the body as it truly is. And sometimes they would do this while there was a corpse in front of them. If there was a dead body, they would do this meditating around the corpse, because then not only can you see the corpse decaying, but you can smell it too. And that odor kind of turns your mind away from being interested in having sex with the body. You start seeing the body more and more as being unattractive. So this meditation of 32-part body meditation is helping you to be able to see the body as it truly is. And this is what the Buddha did during his lifetime. So you can do that. And I'm going to be teaching that this August in our August retreat. I'm going to be teaching the 32-part body meditation and doing it with you guys as part of the retreat. But also, because of modern technology, we have the ability to accomplish the same thing where the Buddha would have you visualize the individual body parts and meditate with a corpse, that we can actually do that through photographs. So now what some people tend to do is they'll get a photograph like this, they'll keep their eyes open, and they'll look at the body through an image like this, and they'll meditate on it. They'll just stare at the body, breathing in and out, in and out. And if you'd like to do this with a corpse, if you're in that environment, there are some places where you can do that. Some countries, other countries control a body because of the disease and illness that can happen when a body dies. But there's even places like anatomy labs. I did this when I was in America. We paid like $15 to go into this anatomy lab. It was designed for scientists and doctors. We were doing it as massage therapists, where it was literally a dead body sitting there on a gurney with the skin ripped off and the organs out, and you could see all the bones and the tendons and the ligaments and all the different things that are part of a body. They even have this traveling exhibition in America. I think it's called The Body, where they've dissected the body. They have the nervous system, they have the circulatory system, they have all these different things. You can see the skin ripped off of things, where you could go into environments like that to be able to see the body as it truly is. If you haven't experienced that, it can have a real impact on the mind. And you can look at photographs like this. You can do the 32-part body meditation, and this is helping the mind to develop the unattractiveness of the body. If this isn't something you're interested in, if you're interested in maintaining your sexual relationship, then you probably wouldn't go in this direction. But ultimately, if you're looking to get to the peace and the joy and you're having difficulties with eliminating your sexual cravings, this would be the way to do it. It is possible to eliminate your sexual cravings without this meditation, right? Just with breathing mindfulness meditation, with generosity, with every time that agitation arises due to not getting sex, you cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. You can do that. But if you need some specialized help to go in and do it, this is what you could do. Or say somebody has a challenge with pornography or masturbation, you could use this kind of thing. Or say somebody has the urge to rape somebody and forcibly have sex with somebody, you could use this kind of thing to eliminate that craving, desire, attachment. So this is a tool that you can use, and it's on an as-needed basis. Not everybody that's going to get to enlightenment is going to need this particular meditation, but everybody who's going to get to enlightenment will need to eliminate sexual contact if that's what they're choosing to do. But when or if they're going to choose to do that is up to them. But you couldn't get to enlightenment while still having sex, because you're going to have agitation in times where you can't get sex, because sex is impermanent. So this is a tool that we can use, but it's not required to use this tool. But you will need to eliminate sexual cravings at some point if that's what you're interested in doing in order to get to enlightenment. I would have never told you, probably even 6 or 8 years ago, that at this point in my life I would have given up sex, right? When we're in our 20s, when we're in our 30s, having sex, wow, we can't imagine anything better than that. I thought I would be on my deathbed still having sex because it's that enjoyable, right? But as you're training your mind with these teachings and you start noticing the peace and the joy coming through, you start valuing that and appreciating that much more than this temporary experience that you have over here. So as I was training my mind, there were times where I might have had sex and I felt great for an hour or so, or a day or so, or however long those feelings lasted. But then the mind was right back into the agitation and the frustration, and it was heightened and it was more severe than it was before. So I could go like 3 months, 6 months sometimes without having sex, and wow, the mind would be so peaceful and so joyful and all these kinds of things. And then I would have sex and wow, I felt even better. But then after a few hours or a few days, the mind would be experiencing painful feelings. So before, for 3 months or 6 months, my mind would be feeling really great. then I would get this sex and I would feel really great, but then my mind would drop down below where I was before. So I started appreciating those 3 months or 6 months of peacefulness and joy more than that 1 hour or 5 hours or 2 days of whatever I was experiencing through sex. Right now, maybe you can't imagine that because having sex is the best thing that you're experiencing, where when you're not having sex, your mind is feeling quite miserable, perhaps here and there, or sorrowful. And sometimes we use sex in order to get to those pleasant feelings. But as you're training your mind and you're getting into that first and second stage of enlightenment, and you're starting to notice these longer and longer periods of peacefulness and joy, you might start appreciating that peacefulness and joy more than the actual sex. And you start realizing how much the sex is actually allowing these painful feelings to continue, that by indulging in sex, it's allowing the mind to continue to be unenlightened, and now you're extending the amount of time where the mind is experiencing these painful feelings. Whereas if you just get rid of the sexual craving, you can get to the point where the mind is peaceful and joyful for longer and longer periods of time. So that's how you might end up using this type of meditation. Not everyone's going to need it, but some people might use it as a way to kind of accelerate the process of getting rid of sexual cravings. Everyone's going to need breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness to get to enlightenment, because they need to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and eliminate ill will. So they need to eliminate that central desire and eliminate that ill will. And those are the two meditations that are going to do it. But this is a specialized one to eliminate sexual cravings. And some people have a craving for sex very, very strongly, and they need this, and other people don't. They can eliminate it with just the Eightfold Path, with the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity. So any questions on this one? Question, Doche? Okay.
Maybe I'm getting a little ahead because you might talk about it in the 32 body parts. Mm-hmm. In the 32 body parts, like meditation, are you also looking at maybe the unwholesome or the unattractiveness of each body part, like the hair? Like when I've been doing it before, I was taught that way. So is it similar how you teach as well? Like you're looking at how the hair is like not attractive, like seeing it clearly, and then as each part, or like as separate entities?
Yeah, you're looking at each individual part, each individual piece, and considering it to be unattractive, and developing the perception in your mind that this is unattractive, that this hair, this gallbladder, this lungs, and that's what you're essentially having sex with, is these little bits and pieces and parts, and seeing that as being unattractive rather than looking at this outer shell and finding it to be attractive. So you're looking at each individual piece to develop this unattractiveness in the mind.
How is it for an enlightened person? Is he also unattracted by things like that, or is it?
So when an enlightened person looks at something like this, they're not attracted to it, but they're not repulsed by it either. Where that's why I give you guys a heads up that, hey, I'm about to show this, because sometimes I've had students that are really repulsed by it, and they're like, why did you show that? Right? So I kind of give people the heads up that I'm getting ready to flip the slide to see the dead body. But an enlightened being isn't going to be attracted to this, and they're not going to be repulsed by it. Same thing with a beautiful man or a beautiful woman. An enlightened being is not going to be attracted to it, and they're not going to be repulsed by it either. That it's just a body, and it's just impermanent. It's just tissue and bones and fluid. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you could be in the presence of a very attractive person that's completely naked, laying on a bed and saying, come take me right now. And you wouldn't be interested. You wouldn't be attracted to it, and you wouldn't be repulsed by it. You would it's just not what I'm interested in. Just not interested in that, right? So that's what you would ultimately be able to get to. So that's why it's kind of interesting, like a lot of these temples, they have women cover up, right, and wear skirts or wear clothing. And I understand why they're doing that, because they're trying to create an environment where the people who are at that temple can train their mind to get to enlightenment, because on your way to enlightenment, seeing somebody wearing certain clothing, it can arise sensual desire in your own mind. So that's what they're trying to do, is protect that environment and create a womb for people to grow and be nurtured in and evolve to become a better person. But by the time you get to enlightenment, it doesn't matter who you see, what you're experiencing, you wouldn't be interested in indulging in sexual activity. I can tell you a story from the lifetime of the Buddha, that there was a woman who was very interested in the Buddha. Apparently the Buddha was a very handsome man. He was considered to be very handsome during his lifetime. And there was a certain woman who was quite young and in her prime of life, and she was a sex worker, and she was interested in having the Buddha be her husband. And she invited him to come to her home with the intention to entice him to be her husband. And the Buddha used to stay with his students in their house. So he was invited to this house to stay and to live there for a while. And this woman was interested in learning the teachings. At least that's what she said. And this message was passed to him by one of his students. So the Buddha was with a lot of his students, and this message came by one of his students and said, hey, this woman, this sex worker down the street would like you to come stay with her and teach her some teachings. And his students were sure that there was no way he was going to accept this invitation because of her reputation, because of being interested in sex. And they all kind of knew that she wanted him to be her husband. But the Buddha accepted the invitation, and he went to this house. And when he went to the house, right away from the very beginning, she kept trying to entice him into sexual activity and to be her husband and all these kinds of things. And he just kept teaching her the teachings, and he kept sharing the teaching. And he did spend the night overnight. And she kept wanting him and wanting him and wanting him. And she was like, why don't you want me? Why don't you want me? And he just is like, I'm here to share the teachings to help you get to enlightenment. And ultimately he ends up leaving and going back the next day to his students. And they were like, what happened? What happened? He was like, I shared the teachings with her. So then many, many years go on. This lady becomes very rich and very wealthy. She's a very attractive lady, and she has lots of customers. But as she aged, she wasn't able to make money. And she was very old and decrepit, and she was in the streets, and people knew that she was a sex worker, and they were, throwing dust on her, and they were mocking her. And she was in the streets with rags on, and she didn't have her money anymore because she depleted her wealth because she couldn't make money. And the Buddha happened to walk by and see her. And the Buddha says, now I want you. Now I want you. And he invited her to come ordain and be an ordained practitioner. And she does. She ordains, and she ends up getting to enlightenment because he didn't want her before because she was flying high, really wealthy, really rich, had all this craving and sensual desire for him to be her husband. And that's not what he was interested in. But when she was down, when she was having a hard time, when she was down on her luck, so to speak, even though there's no such thing as luck, he's like, now I want you. Now come be a student and you can learn with me. So you can see that even an enlightened being enticed by this beautiful woman, very rich, very wealthy, he just wasn't interested. He was only interested in sharing the teaching. So by the time you get rid of sensual desire, you know that that person's attractive. You know that they're handsome or beautiful, but you're not enticed to any kind of sexual activity because your mind just isn't interested in that, because the peace and the joy that you're experiencing in the enlightened mental state is beyond anything that you'll ever experience during sex. We can't imagine that. We can't imagine when we're having sex that there's actually something better than sex. But there is, and it's called enlightenment, right? So if there was a way to get to enlightenment while still having sex, I would have figured it out, and I would have let you guys know. I would have been pleased to report on that to you guys, but there's just no way to get to enlightenment while still having sex. But there is something that's better than sex. It's beyond this pleasure of sex, and it's called enlightenment. And you might start seeing that more and more as your mind awakens and you start seeing these 3 months, 6 months of peace and joy. You start valuing and appreciating that much more than this temporary experience of sex.
I just thought it's like completely the opposite, right? Seeing this disgusting organs and so on. Isn't that producing a new craving of, I don't know, you know what I mean? If we see this often and then we see another human being and thinking about what is disgusting, this body and all it's inside, isn't that also not shouldn't we find the middle here, or does the mind it by them own?
Yeah, you need to find the middle, because what you're describing as disgusting, that's being repulsed by it. What the Buddha is teaching you is to develop the perception of unattractiveness, which is the middle way. Being attracted to it and wanting to have sex with this body is the craving. The other side is the repulsion. And that's where the unenlightened mind lives, is usually on each side of this. But he's helping you to be able to see this middle way, which is to be able to see that, yeah, this is unattractive, meaning that I'm not interested in going and indulging in this temporary pleasure because it's just going to end up in pain. As long as you allow this temporary pleasure to keep on going, it's only a matter of time before you can't get sexual activity and you're going to be agitated and frustrated because you can't get it. So you'll start seeing that more and more. So the idea here isn't to be disgusted by this. That's the opposite side. So by the time you're enlightened, you won't see this as disgusting. It's just bits and pieces and parts in a human body. So you're not repulsed by it, but you're not attracted to it either.
Before lunch, you gave the example of having a craving to go to the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, why not give into that craving and go to the Philippines? Mm-hmm. But I guess there's other cravings where it's advised not to give into them.
Yeah.
or try to work through them. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are some, maybe they're unenlightened views, but there are views out there. Mm-hmm. On the internet, on YouTube, I guess, which sometimes does say, dive into this, dive into your cravings, and that can be a way of almost exhausting them and realizing the mm-hmm. futility of them. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I guess the question is, yes, there's not much, there's little to be gained by just going the other way and giving into cravings.
Yeah, there's some cravings that are like that. And you can actually approach sex that way too. So let me explain that. So something like alcohol, cocaine, heroin, go away from those things as far as possible, right? Like if somebody had a craving for those things, I wouldn't say like indulge in LSD or indulge in heroin, and that's how you're going to extinguish your craving to that thing, right? So those are ones where you just got to go away from it. Going to the Philippines, remember I prefaced that with there's no harm, right? There's no harm there. With sexual activity, it's like, if you indulge in sexual activity, your mind can get really hooked to it and you can get indulged in it, immersed in it, and you'll have a hard time coming out of that, right? But also there's the other side that if you're young and you haven't had much sex and that's like a curiosity that you have, you can go in that direction and you can do a bunch of that stuff. You just got to be aware at some point you got to dig yourself out of that. Right. So if you've been there, done that, had sex many different ways in different situations, you'll extinguish your interest in that eventually. That's why as we age, we tend to naturally let go of sexual activity. It tends to be something we're less interested in as we age. But as a young person, if you go down that path, just understand that there's the potential to get really sucked into it. And this is one of the hindrances to enlightenment, is that the mind can be holding on to these sensual desires so strongly that your mind doesn't come out of it. So if you've ever been in a relationship where like maybe you and your partner were having a lot of sex, there were times when me and my wife first got together, there were days where we had sex like 5 times in one day. And by like the 3rd time, I was like, man, I got to take a shower again. We got to do this again. Like, this is so much work. Like, I'm not interested in doing this. But I was like, all right, well, why not? Let's do it. Right. So if you've ever been in that situation where you've had sex like 3, 4, 5, 6 times in one day, you get to the point where you're just exhausted and you're tired of doing it. So you can go that direction if you'd like, but you can get hooked to it and you can indulge in it and not let it go. So you got to be very observant of what you're doing if you choose to go down that path of indulging in it in order to be able to exhaust it and let it go. The thing that you would think about if you're considering this is that wherever you are right now with sexual activity, if you got to the end of this life, would you still have the thought of, gosh, I really wish I would have done that. I really wish I would have done that thing that I never done. Because if that's what you're going to end up with at the end of this life, there's still a craving in your mind and you haven't been able to let it go. And you really wish you would have done that thing in that sexual activity. And now, because of that craving, your mind never got to enlightenment, and now you're going to be reborn because of that craving. So in that situation, if there's that thing that you never did, go ahead and do it, perhaps, understanding that you're going to need to get out of it at some point and not continue to hold on to the sexual activity. Because you would like to get to the point where sometime during your life, long before death, that there's nothing else that you want to do in this world. You are doing things, you're enjoying doing things, but there's nothing else that you want to do. Like me going to Mexico, sometimes people say, or when I went to America 2 years ago, they said, "Oh, do you really want to go to America? Are you excited to go to America?" And I said, "I don't want to go to America, but I need to go to America because the students have invited me and now I need to go teach. I don't want to go to Mexico, but I need to go to Mexico because students there have invited me and they're asking me to come teach." So by the time you get to the end of your life, you would like to have exhausted all your wants, that you don't want these things. So if you get to the end of your life and you really wanted that one sexual experience that you never had, then you still have craving, you're not enlightened, you're going to be reborn because you haven't exhausted everything that you'd like to exhaust. So in that respect, if you need to do something in the sexual realm, okay, even though it's not a 5 realms of existence, it's, in the sexual area, then go do that thing perhaps, but just know that you got to dig yourself out of that at some point. Okay, so no more questions on this one. Let's see if we have anything online. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So let's go to the next meditation, which is the meditation to realize non-self. I have this described in the book, volume 1, chapter 11. I have this meditation described, and I've taught this in a few retreats. So now I'm going to teach it to you. You guys already know what personal existence view is. You already know some of the other things that you can be doing in order to eliminate personal existence view. This meditation is just one thing that you can do in order to help you with elimination of personal existence view. But you wouldn't be able to just start with this. Like say somebody was brand new to the path. They've only been studying for a few weeks or a few months. I wouldn't suggest they go off and do this because it's not going to have the same effect as if you've already built up your Eightfold Path, you've already built up your breathing mindfulness meditation and your generosity, because you need to kind of soften up the mind to a certain degree for it to be able to be willing to let go of personal existence view. When you're doing this meditation, it can feel like you're walking off of a cliff because what you're doing is you're letting go of all the things of who you thought you were as a person, and you're letting all that go. So all that identity of I am Canadian, I am a Brit, I'm an Aussie, I'm American, I'm Indian, all these I am German, all this occupation, as you're letting all that go from the mind, you feel like you're walking off a cliff, but you never fall, right? And it can be kind of fearful. So this isn't a meditation that you necessarily do every single day. It's a meditation that you might do. You kind of trigger this personal existence view. It feels like you're walking off a cliff and you're kind of peeling away a little bit of this personal existence view. Then after about a week or so, you might do it again. Or after 2 or 3 days or so, you might do it again. And you kind of hit it again and you start peeling away some of this personal existence view. So the way that you do it is you do these affirmations where in the mind, just like with loving kindness meditation, you think in the mind, I am not the body. And you repeat that, I am not the body. I am not the body on the out breath. And then I am not the mind. I am not the mind. You repeat it just like loving kindness meditation, like really slow. Even though I'm doing it fast here, you do, I am not the body. I am not the body, right? So you can do it that way. I am not the body. I am not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. I am not the body. I am not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. So you can do each statement repeatedly, one by one, or you can do all 5 of these and then repeat all 5. You can do it either way, where you're I'm not the body, I'm not the body, I'm not the body. And then I am not the mind, I'm not the mind, I'm not the mind. Or you can do I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. There is no self, I do not exist. I am not the body, I'm not the mind. There is no self, I do not exist. And then start over at the very top and then come through it again. You can do it either way. See which one works best for you. But again, you're going to need to have a lot of other things on board. Usually someone starts to do this when they're experiencing the jhanas. That's when you start doing this one. If you're just getting your arms around the Eightfold Path and you're breathing mindfulness meditation and your loving kindness meditation and all these other things, this isn't something you're going to jump into. But for this particular course, this is where I teach this And I also teach it in the retreats that I teach as well. I teach this particular meditation because usually by the time someone's studying in this course or in either of those two retreats, they've been studying for a while. But sometimes there's students who are brand new, who enter into this course or enter into those retreats. So this is where you are on your own independent journey, and you've got to decide for yourself, when's the appropriate time for me to bring this in? And it's usually when you're in the jhanas. So since you guys learned about the jhanas in this course and how to identify when you're in those, that's the time when you start bringing this in. Other than that, you can be doing those other things that we talked about to help eliminate personal existence view, like with the hair, the clothes, the disassociation, associating with I am hungry or I am angry. You can start changing your language, some of those things. But this meditation is usually best once you start experiencing the jhanas. Okay? So backing up here, what I have in this particular discussion is I have these words of the Buddha where you can see the 4 meditations that he taught, and you can see that what I teach you are those 4 meditations. Sometimes people are out there learning 50, 100, 300 different meditations, and in reality, the Buddha only ever taught 4, and it's the 4 that I teach you. It's breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. You can see that here. And he also taught the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, and he taught the meditation to realize non-self. So here, prior to this, he was talking to his students about cultivating wholesome friends and wholesome companions and some other things that they needed to do in order to develop their mind on the path to enlightenment. And then he says, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things that he was talking about previously, the monk should develop further another 4 things. And it's these 4 things. The first one is the perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. That's that meditation that I taught first. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. You guys have learned that one. Mindfulness of breathing or breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts. I usually start students with that one. You guys have learned that one. And now number 4, the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. This is part of the ego, that personal existence view, that I am so important, right? I am a police officer. I am an auto mechanic. I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit I am, which is nibbana or enlightenment in this very life. So this is that 4th meditation. So now what you guys have been exposed to that you'll need to work with is breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. Here you can see what you're eliminating, which is craving, desire, attachment, and you're cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind, training the mind to have concentration or practice singleness of mind, and the ability to cut things off and let them go. So these are the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating, which is mindfulness and concentration, and you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, which is the unwholesome quality. In loving kindness meditation, you're eliminating anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance, and so forth. And you're cultivating loving kindness for all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill. With the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, you're working to eliminate sensual desire, or specifically sexual cravings, right? And then you're looking to cultivate the wholesome quality of the unattractiveness of the body. Then with this meditation to realize non-self, you're working to eliminate the unwholesome quality of the self or personal existence view, the concept that there is a self. You're trying to dissolve that out of the mind so that you can realize non-self by cultivating impermanence through eradicating the conceit I am, to realize non-self. What we mean by realize non-self is to realize that this is not you, that there is no self. The mind needs to realize this, because just understanding it intellectually isn't going to allow you to be calm and peaceful when someone's mocking or joking about this physical appearance, right? It's not going to be enough. So intellectually understanding the universal truth of non-self is important, and intellectually understanding the fetter of personal existence view is important, but then you need to move it into practice in order to dissolve it and eradicate it out of the mind. And that's what we mean when we say realize non-self, that the mind needs to realize that there is no self. And this is going to take take a lot of work to be able to do that. But gradually, slowly but surely, you can do it. And then you'll see more and more that the mind will be more and more peaceful. So it's this meditation that's going to help you to be able to do that, to realize non-self. Okay? To realize that there is no self. So any questions on this one? No questions? Okay. So usually what I do at this point is guide you in this meditation, because the sexual craving one, I think it's pretty straightforward. If you would like help with this, usually students sometimes ask privately. They'll let me know what their situation is with sexual cravings, and I can help you learn this. I've never done this with a class, although if you guys would like to do this one, we can do this one. Usually what I do at this point is I guide you in this one, because this one is one that students might like to try to do at this point. So what are your guys' thoughts? Would you like to do the sexual craving one, or the one to realize non-self, or no meditation at all? Those are the options. So I'll take a poll. Who would like to do the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings? Who would like to realize non-self? Who would like to do no meditation at all? I'm just raising my hand just for fun. Okay, so you guys would like to do this one. Okay, all right. So do you guys need a bathroom break? Anybody need a bathroom break? No? Okay, so let's do this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the chanting. I'm not going to guide you on the breathing mindfulness meditation, but take 2 or 3 minutes to do breathing mindfulness meditation to cultivate the mind and cultivate the breath and focus the mind on the breath. Then I'm going to come in with these affirmations, and you do these quietly within your own mind. Then go back to breathing mindfulness, and then we'll come out with the chanting. Okay? Lots of lying meditation this afternoon. For those of you guys watching on the internet, lots of lying meditation this afternoon after lunch. Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sankho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. On your next out breath, repeat these affirmations in the mind. I am not the body. I am not the body. I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am not the mind. I am not the mind. There is no self. There is no self. There is no self. I do not exist. I do not exist. I do not exist. I am not the body. I am not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. I am not the body. I am not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. I am not the body. I am not the mind. There is no self. I do not exist. Now go back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho โพตังมหากวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหากวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, we'll see who is actually meditating and who's actually sleeping by who doesn't get up. If someone stays down, oh, Joel, nope, he's up. He was meditating. All right. Okay, so this is the meditation to realize non-self. Again, it's not something you're going to do every single day. It's usually kind of once every 3 days, once a week, something like that, where some of these other things, you space them out, where breathing mindfulness and loving kindness is an everyday thing. This one is not quite that, right? If you were really uncomfortable at any point during this meditation, this means it was probably working. Sometimes people tell me when they get to the part of I do not exist, they feel very uncomfortable when they say that in their mind. And if that's what you experience, then that means it's working. Because as you do this meditation each time, the mind will become more and more comfortable with realizing that there is no I here. But when you're saying these things, your mind might not be comfortable with it. And that's the discontentedness that is arising because the mind's not getting the craving fulfilled. The craving is, I want to hold on to this identity. I want to hold on to this body, and I want it to be permanent. And when you start doing these affirmations and the mind's starting to realize, hey, this isn't permanent, and then the mind can feel uncomfortable with that. So if you're noticing that, that means you're doing the meditation properly, right? But I'm curious if you guys have any questions or if there's any thoughts that you guys would like to share. But this is one of the things that people often share with me is that they were uncomfortable when they were doing the meditation. And that means it was working perfect. And you're going to feel uncomfortable until the personal existence view is eliminated from the mind. But anything you guys would like to ask or questions or any discussion you'd like to have around this? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. This is too early for you to be practicing this since you just started studying with me about a month and a half ago. You're probably going to need a good 6 months to a year, if not longer, to really let the breathing mindfulness meditation soak in and all the other factors of the Eightfold Path before this will actually be very effective. It's almost like hitting a brick wall when your mind hasn't been softened up enough. So there needs to be enough of these other things that you're learning to soften up the mind for this to really have a real effect. Nothing else? Okay. Oh, no? Okay. All right. So tomorrow, let me show you guys what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to start the morning with the meditation to realize non-self. Now that you guys done it once, we'll do it again to give you guys a little bit more comfortable with it. And then I'm going to teach you the 5 hindrances, removing the obstructions to your enlightenment. These are 5 things that the Buddha teaches are going to obstruct you from getting to enlightenment. Because as much as we teach you how to get to enlightenment, we also need to teach you what's going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment. So this is referred to as the 5 hindrances. I'm going to teach you guys that tomorrow. That's going to take up our whole morning. We'll probably have a pretty long lunch tomorrow. Usually Friday, people like to go out and have a group lunch. Maybe you guys, I don't know if you've had a group lunch yet, but if you'd like to all go out to a particular place, we could all go do a group lunch somewhere. Take a kind of a 2-hour lunch break if we'd like. Take our time, go over to Blue Diamond or Rad Rabbit or Alchemy Vegan or our little spot right here, 50 baht, 40 baht place. We could go there. There's many different places. If you guys would like to take a really long lunch, we could even go all the way out to Hua Tung Tao to the bamboo huts on the reservoir. If you guys would like, I can tell you guys about that place if you like. That's a really fun place to go. That would be a little bit longer than 2 hours, but if you'd like to sit out on a lake and sit in a bamboo hut and have food brought to you and kick back and relax and talk, we can go there too. Okay, so then in the afternoon, we'll do that meditation for breathing mindfulness meditation. And then in the very last thing is what I'll do is how to determine if you've attained enlightenment. Because you're going to need to know that, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll know you have attained enlightenment. I teach people not to convince yourself that you are enlightened, but you'll know that your mind is actually enlightened. So I'll teach you guys all about that. And that's the last thing, other than learning continued support, which is something you guys might have heard me share in other classes. But those of you guys online, you might not know those kinds of things. I'm going to share with you how to get continued support on the path to enlightenment. So this is our plan for tomorrow. So thank you all for your interest to learn. Thank you for everything you're doing to keep the temple nice and clean. I see you guys taking out the trash and filling the water and all these things. This is wonderful that we take care of this space, because as you guys know, it doesn't belong to me. It's the community's temple and we all take care of it. And it's lovely to see you guys taking care of it. So thank you guys for that. So perhaps I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.